The minerals supply chain spans the globe. It brings development to remote places, providing jobs in extracting the materials and transporting and processing them. That supports development of communities, but it also brings risks. Some of these places have suffered through conflict and instability. That makes them a high risk for human rights abuses and other serious abuses. These places are called conflict-affected and high-risk areas, or CAHRAs for short. If your company sources materials from suppliers with any links to a CAHRA, that's considered a red flag. A red flag doesn't necessarily mean there are human rights abuses or other adverse impacts. It just means that you need to conduct more due diligence to be sure that those abuses aren't occurring. That would involve additional research, discussions with suppliers, and assessments on the ground. But if you find that there are no red flags, then you'd only need to do basic due diligence, which is much simpler. Here we'll show you the process you need for identifying red flags. That will show you how deep your due diligence needs to go. In short, there are 4 steps in the process for identifying red flags. First, you need to understand who your supplier is and what type of business they operate. Then, determine whether their material was mined or recycled, and the place where it came from if it was mined. Next, you need to check if your material or supplier has ties to a CAHRA. To do so, you'll first need to identify what you consider to be a CAHRA. Finally, compare the supplier and material information with the red flag definitions to see if there are any links to a CAHRA. Let's go through these 4 steps to see how your process should work. First, you need to understand who your supplier is and what type of business they operate. Gather information on the identity, nature, and legality of the supplier's business and the beneficial ownership. You may collect this information through your company's existing KYC process. Your KYC process should follow the Financial Action Task Force recommendations on criminal liability and sanctions violations. Check that the supplier is not listed on any sanctions lists. Gather information about the supplier's business, including their operations outside of your relationship. Your research should answer 2 key questions. Has the supplier sourced materials from a CAHRA in the last 12 months? And does the supplier have shares in any company based in a CAHRA or that sources materials from a CAHRA? That means any shares at all, even a 1% stake. You need to know this for each supplier you work with, both at the start of the relationships and whenever there are changes to your relationship with the supplier or to their business. Next, gather information about the material. First, is the material mined or recycled? If it's only recycled material, then you don't need to trace the source any further than your immediate supplier. You just need to confirm that the material is in fact recycled. Next, how much material did you receive? Make sure that the type and weight of the material is recorded and confirmed to be accurate. If you received mined material, you'll need more information on the material itself, its country of origin, and any countries and intermediaries the materials passed through before it got to you. To identify links with CAHRAs, you must define what you consider to be conflict-affected and high-risk areas. There is no single list of CAHRAs for all materials. The EU has a list of CAHRAs for 3TG minerals, but if your business involves any other materials, the EU list is not sufficient. Develop a procedure for identifying CAHRAs. In the procedure, you'll define the criteria on which you base your determination, resources that you'll consult, and the thresholds, how high a risk must be to qualify as a CAHRA. Your criteria for CAHRAs should cover big issues, like the status of armed conflict, governance, and human rights. If there's armed conflict, how severe and widespread is it? How well can the government maintain security and rule of law? Are there reports of widespread human rights violations? Then, define the resources that you'll use to make the determination. There are many credible resources available for each of the criteria. Some are issue-specific and some are comprehensive, and lots of them are free. There's the EU's list of CAHRAs for 3TG. The European Commission offers guidance documents on how to comply with the new EU conflict minerals regulations. And the RMI offers guidance on how to develop your CAHRA identification procedure and a global risk map. Once you select the resources, define the level for each indicator that would cause you to classify an area as a CAHRA. Document your procedure and schedule regular reviews. Monitor that the procedure is being consistently applied. When you apply the CAHRA procedure, document your findings. To confirm whether you have red flags or not, you now need to review all of the information gathered. Assess whether the information is plausible and compare it with your list of CAHRAs. First, review the material amount and compare it with published estimates of reserves in the area. Refer to industry-specific mineral production data collected by industry associations, academic institutions, and governments. Consider, is it plausible the supplier could offer that amount of materials from that source? For example, if you receive material from a country with no production, you haven't identified the final country of origin yet. Or if you received more zinc concentrate from Zambia than is currently reported as mined there, that would be a red flag. Look at the information about the material received and see if any of the countries in your supply chain are identified as a CAHRA based on your procedure: country of origin, countries through which it passed, and your own country. If so, that would be a red flag. For suppliers, examine the information you've gathered, where they operate, where companies they own operate, and where they've sourced in the past year. If a supplier operates or owns a company in a CAHRA, that would be a potential red flag. If they've sourced materials in the past year from a CAHRA, that is a potential red flag. In some cases, materials are produced by multinational, multi-metal producing companies. If so, there may be potential supplier red flags with other materials produced by the supplier. If that's the case, you're still expected to conduct due diligence on that supplier until you're confident that they have a company-wide due diligence system in place and the materials you purchase specifically are not from that CAHRA. There are 3 possible scenarios here. The material you sourced came from a CAHRA. This confirms your red flag, so you'd need to conduct further due diligence. The supplier produces a different material in a CAHRA, but you do not source that material. If so, you don't need to conduct further due diligence. For example, if you found that a supplier sources gold from a high-risk area, but you only buy nickel, you do not need to take further actions. The material you sourced didn't come from a CAHRA, but the supplier produces the same material in a CAHRA. In this case, you need to conduct further due diligence to confirm that the materials you received didn't come from that CAHRA. To provide assurance, you'd need to confirm that the supplier has a due diligence program covering all their operations, even those not directly related to you. To confirm no red flag, first verify that the origin of your materials is not the CAHRA. Then you need to understand if your supplier has a company-wide due diligence program in place, or if the due diligence program is only for one facility. If the supplier has a company-wide policy, ensure that facility you're supplying from is aware of and adheres to this policy. First, check if they have a publicly available supply chain policy and due diligence report. For example, do the report show how the company implements due diligence across materials and geographies? If there are no publicly available reports, or if the reports do not allow you to understand the supplier's due diligence program, you need to talk directly to the supplier. Ask them about their sourcing and due diligence practices to better understand their program. Where possible, work with the supplier to improve their future disclosures. In summary, if there are any of the following instances, you need to confirm a red flag. The material originated or transited through a CAHRA. A supplier operates or owns operations in a CAHRA or sourced from a CAHRA in the past 12 months. If you received materials from a CAHRA, if you have not received materials from a CAHRA, but you have not been able to confirm that the supplier has a strong company-wide due diligence program. If the red flag review process reveals that there are red flags, you should notify senior management that red flags were found and what they are. A red flag doesn't always show that there is an actual adverse impact. It just means that there's a higher likelihood of risk. If so, you'll need to carry out a deeper risk assessment through desk research, supplier engagement, and on-the-ground assessment. This will be discussed in more detail in the next module.